They ran into something they had never seen before. The M1 Grand, a semi-automatic rifle firing powerful .30-06 rounds, changed everything. It fired faster, hit harder, and turned every rifleman into a storm of firepower. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a revelation that shocked an empire. And the story only gets darker from here. So hit subscribe now, so you don't miss what comes next. The rifle that would shock the world was not forged in the jungles of the Pacific, but in the quiet halls of Springfield Armory years before the war. Its creator, John C. Garand, was a Canadian-born machinist who perfected a design few armies dared to adopt: a standard-issue, semi-automatic battle rifle. By the late 1930s, after years of testing, the United States made a decision that set it apart from every other major power. While Britain, Germany, and Japan armed their infantry with bolt-action rifles rooted in the 19th century design, America placed its trust in something new: the M1 Grand. At first glance, the weapon looked ordinary. Chambered in the powerful .30-06 cartridge, it carried an 8-round clip, loaded not singly, but as a full block of ammunition. With every pull of the trigger, the rifle fired and automatically reloaded, ready to shoot again in less than a second. The action was smooth, mechanical, and relentless. A trained rifleman could fire 40 to 50 accurate rounds a minute, far eclipsing the bolt-action rifles of the era that rarely managed half that pace. American generals recognized what they had. General George S. Patton would later call it the greatest battle implement ever devised. Soldiers echoed the sentiment in their own way, giving the weapon a mythic reputation even before it proved itself in combat. For the ordinary farm boy turned recruit, the M1 Grand was easy to learn, rugged, and forgiving in mud, sand, and rain. Its end-block clip gave a signature metallic ping when empty, a sound that would become infamous on battlefields across the world. By the time the United States entered World War II, millions of these rifles were rolling off production lines. When Marines prepared to step foot on Guadalcanal in 1942, most of them carried the M1 Grand slung over their shoulders. To the Americans, it was simply their standard rifle. To the Japanese, it would soon become a nightmare they never anticipated. The Japanese army that faced the Americans was built on rigid discipline and an unshakable belief in spiritual superiority. Their doctrine preached that courage and training could overcome technological disparity. Infantrymen were drilled endlessly in bayonet charges, infiltration at night, and the idea that Western soldiers lacked the will for close combat. The standard Japanese rifle, the Arisaka, was a bolt-action weapon reliable in its own right, but it demanded precision and patience under fire. Leaders believed that against American rifles, their warriors could close the distance, relying on shock and steel to break fragile morale. But the first clashes in the jungles of Guadalcanal told a different story. Japanese patrols, creeping silently through the vines, expected single shots and long pauses between American fire. What they met instead was a withering stream of semi-automatic fire that came faster than they could advance. A Marine armed with an M1 Grand could fire again and again without working a bolt, every round carrying the same power as a machine gun bullet, but with the accuracy of a marksman's rifle. Entire squads fell in seconds, stunned by the sheer volume of fire from men they thought would hesitate. The psychological effect was devastating. Survivors reported that the battlefield no longer followed the rules they knew. Every Japanese soldier had been told Americans were slow, clumsy, dependent on artillery. But here were riflemen who could cut down an entire charge with their own hands. The ping of an empty clip became a chilling punctuation mark in the dark jungle, a sign that the rain of fire might pause for only a heartbeat before beginning again. What began as doctrine-shattering skirmishes quickly hardened into a truth. The Americans had a rifle that rewrote the equation of infantry combat. For the Japanese, it was not just a weapon. It was the shattering of certainty, proof that bravery alone could not withstand innovation. The first time Japanese soldiers truly felt the sting of the M1 Grand was not in a massive battle, but in the tense, humid nights of Guadalcanal. Small infiltration squads crept forward under moonless skies, moving silently through the brush with grenades and bayonets ready. They had been taught to believe that the darkness belonged to them, that Americans could not endure sudden, violent encounters at close range. Yet every time they slipped close to Marine perimeters, they discovered the old lessons no longer held. Picture a squad moving toward an American foxhole, expecting one nervous shot and then silence. Instead, the jungle erupted with a chain of rapid cracks, each one hitting with the force of a .30-06 round. A single Marine could send 8 shots flying in under 5 seconds, each aimed with deadly precision. Japanese survivors later recalled the horror of seeing comrades collapse before anyone could close the distance. What they thought would be a bayonet duel dissolved into sudden slaughter, as if the jungle itself was spitting fire. The semi-automatic rhythm disoriented them. The Arisaka rifle demanded that its user lift, pull, and reset the bolt before firing again. Precious seconds where momentum was lost. But the M1 Grand required nothing but the squeeze of a trigger. The result was a wall of firepower unlike anything the Japanese had trained to face. Marines quickly learned to exploit this shock. Point men patrolling narrow jungle paths often carried the M1 Grand, ready to unleash devastating bursts at the first sign of movement. At night, sentries would deliberately wait, then fire rapid sequences, making infiltrators believe they had stumbled into machine gun nests. The sound alone was enough to freeze men in their tracks. Within weeks, Japanese soldiers whispered about the Americans' uncanny ability to fire without pause. They had come expecting slow volleys and close combat glory. Instead, they found themselves outmatched not by numbers, but by a rifle that turned every Marine into a predator in the dark. If the M1 Grand stunned individual infiltrators, its true terror appeared when whole squads faced it in coordinated combat. The weapon's advantage was not just speed, but scale. An American rifle squad of 12 men, each with a semi-automatic, could pour out sustained fire at a rate rivaling light machine guns. Against Japanese forces relying on Arisaka bolt actions, the imbalance was immediate and deadly. Imagine a banzai charge crashing forward across open ground. Japanese doctrine demanded courage, the raw will to overwhelm defenders with speed and ferocity. But when dozens of Marines leveled their M1 Grands, the charge met a storm of lead. Every soldier could fire 8 heavy rounds in seconds, reload with a fresh clip, and resume without losing tempo. Where a Japanese unit expected gaps between American shots, they found only an unbroken curtain of bullets. Reports from early battles described attackers being cut down in waves, their formations shredded before they reached bayonet range. One Marine sergeant recalled that his squad fired so quickly during one night assault that Japanese survivors believed they had stumbled into a battery of machine guns. In reality, it was just ordinary riflemen, their weapons multiplying their firepower beyond expectation. This edge also transformed defense into offense. American squads no longer had to rely solely on support weapons. With M1 Grands, they could advance confidently, laying down covering fire as they moved. Japanese soldiers found themselves pinned in positions they once believed secure, forced to retreat under the relentless pace of semi-automatic fire. The shift in balance was undeniable. Bravery alone could not bridge the gap. The M1 Grand gave every Marine the ability to fight with the firepower of 2 or 3 men, and in squad formations, it created a killing power that turned Japanese doctrine into a gamble with no hope of success. The rifle wasn't just a weapon anymore, it was a force multiplier, rewriting the rules of combat in the Pacific. The rifle itself was revolutionary, but what made the M1 Grand a true battlefield terror was the way Marines adapted it. In the jungles